And before I begin, let us understand the definition of what term that we call as Sukh. Because it is very important that we derive the same meaning to understand the conversation, right? So the Sukh basically word means the delightful experiences and feelings that someone is fond of. Do we agree on this definition? I mean, there can be many connotations to that word, but overall I think this pretty much catches that meaning of the Sukh. And when we say that we want Sukh in our life, we want a Sukhi Jivan, and then our parents say that if you want Sukhi Jivan, you have to get married. How many agree with that? One by your soul? Right?
That's the spirit. That's what we are told.
That's the spirit of pressure.
That's the sad switch.
That's what we are getting, right? Alright, so, and then we watch the movies all our life, from Bollywood to Hollywood, married happily ever after. Right? So let us have a quick survey. How many people who are present here who have been married between 0 and 1 year? So the newly married couple right here.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club. And people 5 years married. Wow. Nobody in the 5-year club, 10 year.
Like 5 to 10 years, you mean?
Yeah, 5 to 10 years, something in between. Alright, so we have few people. 20 years. Wow, so we have a lot of experience in this hall. Maybe a couple of 100 years of experience of marriage, right? If we add up 120, 20. So we can come up with some pretty good, decent conclusions based on our experiences that what it is all about. Anybody in the Silver Jubilee Club, 25, right? Congratulations. That's a long and a worthwhile journey. So, if I ask you that the successful marriage is the foundation, means jokes apart, seriously speaking now, if I ask you that successful marriage is the foundation of a Sukhi Jivan, answer is yes or no? Yes, overwhelmingly yes. Alright? And if I say that prem, I'm not using the word love because it means a lot of things to a lot of people, but prem. Prem is the foundation of a successful happy marriage. How many agree and disagree with that? Prem is the foundation, right? And then if I ask you that many married people are Sukhi in the same situations and stations of life in which exact same conditions many other are Dukhi. Is this true or not?
Yes.
Right? So in the situations, some people are happy. In the exact same situations, other people are totally unhappy. So because of the time, I'm not going to get into the examples of what does all that mean. But you got the drift. That Sukhi Jivan, or that happiness that we talk about, is not really dependent on the situations in which we are in. And then, if I ask you further, that does it happen that people, initial phases of their life, married life, they are happy, and then slowly they are not so happy? I don't say they are unhappy, but they are not as happy as they were in the beginning. Is that true? For some?
For some. Yeah.
And vice versa is true also for some. So things are changing over a period of time. And one more thing before we get into this, that do you really believe or experience that psychology and spiritually everybody is growing at a different pace? Everybody is going at a different. Everybody is not driving 50 miles an hour, right? Somebody is going 30, somebody is 80, but everybody is going at a different speed. So when two people come together in marriage, definitely our rate of growth in psychological and spiritual dimensions is different. So there are bound to be certain differences of experiences that we are going through. And let us look about the toolbox that is available to us to make our marriage successful. And even before, let me stop using the word marriage and use the right technical word called vivah. That's what the marriage is called in our Vedic tradition. And we talk of vivah, it means there are certain other words like nirvaha. Vah means to carry. So vivah is a special union to carry a special purpose in life. And the trouble comes when we forget about that special purpose for which vivah is intended. So vivah means it's for a special purpose. It's not just a casual union of two people, two strangers meet and things happen. So there are certain factors that are needed for a successful marriage. And let us see if we agree or not. Once we find our bearings, then we move. So is that self-esteem important in marriage? Atma-samman. Two people must have self-esteem. One should not feel like very humiliated or some kind of in an extraneous situation. So Atma-samman or the self-esteem of both partners should be there, healthy self-esteem. Do you think mental maturity plays any role in a happy marriage?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It does, right? Okay, so we are agreeing here. Do you think bodily health is important? Physical health? Yeah. You don't want to be sick all the time. And how about psychological independence? That you are free to analyze the situations, free to analyze the thoughts and whatever is happening around. Is that important? The psychological independence. You are not forced to think in a certain way by the other partner.
Yeah.
That's important. And sense of responsibility towards family. One is totally oblivious of their responsibility, other has to carry the whole load of the whole family. That becomes a strenuous situation. So we agree about the family responsibility. And one very important thing I want to emphasize here, that both partners should be free from any imaginary and utopian ideas or idols. Before marriage or even during the marriage, people have a lot of imaginations that marriage should be like a cellulite Bollywood film or a Hollywood film, and the home should be like a set of a movie or whatever. So those kind of utopian ideas we have to be free from in order to make that marriage possible in a happy way. And finally comes that our propensities, or what we call as pravritti, our pravritti should be generous and all expansive. And finally we have to be ready to face the challenges of the life and face them calmly, all the situations of sorrow and the joy. So these are the kind of basic parameters under which we talk about a happy and successful marriage. And you can think of all these points that I brought up as a tools or toolkit that is needed for problem solving should the problems arise in any marriage. Okay. So let me take some names here, drop some names, and let us see what is common in all of them. If I say Vasishtha, Gautam, Yagyavalkya, Janak, Yogeshwar Krishna, Yogeshwar Shankar, Maryada Purushottam Ram, what is the common theme in these people? They're all married people, right? So what does this roster of illustrious people and devatas and rishis tell us? That marriage is, as a matter of fact, something that is helpful in our atmic unnati. And that is what is the purpose of our life is meant to be. Marriage is a means to an end. Marriage is not an end in itself. And those who think that marriage is an end in itself, believe it or not, statistically speaking, that kind of marriage is going to end or fail. As long as we consider marriage as a means to certain end, and that end being unnati or atma-unnati of our self, our growth, our enrichment of life, experiencing the fullness and richness of life, only then it makes sense. So in that sense, marriage basically is a institution where we experience the expansion of our circle of togetherness. when you're married, then at that time you start thinking about your spouse also, what he or she needs, what can I do, even putting ourselves in inconvenience to make the other person happy. We start thinking about the joy and comfort of our spouse at that time. So from one, as a child, we started thinking all about me and myself, my toy, my candy, my bike, whatever is going on in the life. But the moment you are married, you have to start thinking about the other person also. So the circle expands. So the first and immediate benefit that is happening in terms of Atmik Unnati is that at least whatever little small, there is an expansion of your circle of belonging. So you belong there. When a child arrives in the family, at that time you start experiencing that kind of unconditional love that you give to child, to raise a child, and to put all your experiences and hope in a child. And that also puts into practice some kind of a control on your own selfishness. Even if you want to sleep, child needs attention, you are paying attention to putting yourself in the inconvenience and so on. So that brings the seva factor into the life. Think what benefits that marriage is bringing, and these are all spiritual qualities, my friend. You cannot learn and force, in an ordinary way in a person by lecturing. This is called experiential learning. Learning is of many kinds. This is by experience you are expanding and learning this stuff. All right. So now let us think about what is going to make a marriage successful. The word used is traits, and the number thrown is 7. And it could be any number, you can pick any number, and we can make up as many things. But the number 7 makes sense in the sense that a marriage is sealed only when the Saptapadi is performed. Okay? So that was a good number, so let us say, so we start with that. And the very first trait of the marriage is that there should be Purna Atmiyata, Niswarth Prem. Until and unless we can experience that unconditional love, Niswarth Prem, this becomes very tough. Otherwise it is just an exercise in domination and selfishness. When this becomes unconditional love, at that point we have really started learning something about the true purpose of the marriage. That is what it is all about. When I think in the tradition, I'm looking at the profile here, everybody has put a Jaimala or Mala at the time of marriage, in all traditions mostly. So when we are putting Mala, what is happening here? Jaimal. Jaimal means you are telling the other person whom you are putting that Jaimal that you win me. You have won my heart. That's what the symbolic message you are giving when you are putting a mala. And it happens from both sides. So both partners are saying to each other that I am a loser. I lost my heart. I'm not taking it seriously. I'm joking. Okay? So here, who wins in the marriage? Where the marriage is successful? Where both the partners are the biggest losers in that sense that they have lost their heart to their partners. So remember that. Very important. Whenever there are, situations in life, challenges in life, think that there was a reason that you have lost your heart to the other person. And those reasons never go away. They existed then, they exist now, and they will continue to exist in the future. What happened that we started ignoring them because we took them for granted. So that's what it is. And when you put the mala, the flowers touch your heart, and also all kind of symbolic significance is there. There was a song playing, I'm not going to repeat and waste time, but you can listen to the song. Pravinji brought it here, a nice playlist of 4 or 5 songs. We'll play it after the event, but that's what it is all about. So second thing is, so first trait you will remember, that's the unconditional love. Second trait is called contentment, santosh. If we do not have santosh or contentment, then mind will be always restless, always complaining. Why we are complaining? Because we are not satisfied, we are not content with what we have. And that contentment is in the sphere of name, fame, wealth and progeny. So we have to we have to basically cultivate these traits, santosh. It doesn't happen all by itself. And we have to also recognize one more thing, that every individual is imperfect. Sometimes the reason of asantosh is that because we are expecting that our partner should be perfect. Now the problem is this here, when we raise our expectation to that impossible level. The problem is this, that our personality is a result of the sanskars that we have earned over many lifetimes. It is not that something you got it off the shelf right here. So when you are marrying a person, this is an as-is deal. Understand that. You know, you buy a car, I'm selling it as is. You go for a real estate, as is. So this is an as-is basis. You have to understand that and accept that I'm accepting this person for who he or she is, as is, without expecting that one should be perfect. And that will bring the santosh in our life. And we have to recognize that we cannot change the basic characteristics of that person. Yeah, we can bring some polishing here and there, some improvements here and there, but you cannot change a person what one is, but that is going to be as is. So, because of that factor, our nature will be different, our likes and dislikes will be different, there will be so many differences. The question and the secret is that what will you do with those differences? The only one answer is compromise. Compromise. And you have to compromise to the extent where it is not hurtful, it is not harmful, and it is not dangerous. You have to keep compromising until that level. Until that stage has reached, it is your duty to keep compromising, and that is the only way to keep moving forward. No other way. Drive in the middle lane. Don't go in the fast lane, don't go in the slow lane, just go that way. So, now comes the third trait, that is called Vivek. Vivek means it's a faculty of discrimination that helps us choose between right and wrong. What should we do, what should we not do? Of course, beyond those small technical problems that come, which sari or which suit to buy, beyond that, it is about what should and should not be done with the life. So wisdom, and that is the discriminatory intellect, and that brings the mutual cooperation, because mutual cooperation is very important. And that mutual cooperation comes when you have a full empathy with the circumstances and conditions of our spouse. If we do not have empathy, if we do not think putting ourselves in the shoe of our spouse, we will not achieve that. And finally, this also goes to say that we have to practice the Atma Tyaga. Atma Tyaga means putting ourselves in situations of inconvenience to make the other person feel good, feel happy, and feel satisfied. And next trait, fourth one, is called our outlook, or drishtikona as we call it. The life is never the same. It keeps changing. The nature also keeps changing to a certain extent. And it is our outlook that tells that how we process that change and how we live in that. And one very key factor or key trait, I call it as the fifth trait here, is that there should be bhavana. There is no word in English I could find here. You can think of it as a kind of an intuitive emotion that comes from, originates in your heart, that bhav samvedana and that sarasta, that mutual resonance in each other. And that resonance, that mutual sarasta or bhav samvedana, you should feel that your spouse is your best friend for life. No matter how hard you fight or how hard whatever you do, but still this is the one person who is going to be the bestest friend for you in the life. And why so? Because this marriage comes into effect to make a whole person. Bhagwan Manu says that a man alone is incomplete, broken. He uses the word incomplete, broken. It's only the wife and the child and the man together that makes the whole unit. And that's what happens when the two people come together in the marriage. They bring their own special qualities, complementary qualities, and help each other experience that richness and fullness, and that's the personality, what you call as a multi-dimensional, whole-rounded personality that comes into effect. And now, the sixth trait is called Kartavya Bodha. We have to be very aware of what our responsibilities are, whether it is doing dishes in the house or putting garbage out on the road or whatever it is. Kartavya Bodha is very important. This means life cannot be carried by just one person alone, the whole load. Otherwise there will be crashing burn, and that's what we experience, and that becomes a cause of concern in certain marriages here. So Kartavya Bodha. But Kartavya Bodha means we do not demand like an authority that you deserve this or you want this or that. It is just that we feel that in my actions and thoughts, the interest of my spouse will take priority. That's all it is about. साथी का सुख और हित पहले देखना चाहिए. And seventh and final trait is about that mutual respect. It is impossible to carry on a healthy and successful marriage forward if the two persons do not respect each other. Very important. And that respect comes by seeking advice and by giving respect. And there should be a total transparency in everything that goes on here. So these are the 7 traits I basically wanted to share with you. And here, one more thing I want to say is that what is this idea of marriage in the overall theme of the Hindu life? You know, the Hindu life is based on a very interesting architecture called Ashram Dharma. Anybody has heard about Ashram Dharma? Ashram Dharma. This is a beautiful architecture of life and a plan of life that tells how we can achieve our highest goal in the various stages of progressive development. Assuming a life of 100 years, you divide the life into 4 quarters, like a sports game is divided into 4 quarters. And in those 4 quarters, the first quarter is meant for acquiring knowledge and strength. We call it a Brahmacharya Ashram. But what happens in Brahmacharya Ashram? The student goes and lives with I'm talking about the traditional India where these concepts were developed. The student goes and lives with the Guru, a Guru's Ashram, a Guru's family. After he has acquired the necessary knowledge and wealth, then he starts the Grihastha Ashram. Griha means home, Sth means sthit. So one who is placed in home is the Grihastha. And Grihastha Dharma, it is, as I gave you the example from Janak to the Yogeshwar Shankar and Yogiraj Krishna and all the rishis, Grihastha Ashram is also a sadhana sthali where we can practice all these special spiritual qualities. And you don't have to go out to practice seva if you are a grihastha. There are ample opportunities right within the 4 walls of your home to do seva. And Acharya Shriram Sharma says very interesting thing. And he says that if you can, let me quote him in the original text he wrote, then I'll translate it. He says, अपने परिवार के सदस्यों की सेवा, remember, अपने परिवार के सदस्यों की सेवा भी पुण्य परमार्थ लोक सेवा ईश्वर पूजन से किसी प्रकार कम नहीं है. Note it, print it, post it on every wall of your room. You don't have to go run around places to practice punya, to practice paramartha, to practice lok seva, to do the Ishwara puja. You know, the murti in mandir is a stationary murti, but here are the murtis which are living, running around, laughing, talking, and that's what when you do the seva, that's the. So the point is this, that Grihastha is a tapovan, you can think of that, where we can develop all these beautiful qualities that we want to develop in our life, from Paramarth, Tyag, Seva, Sahyog, Sakar, all those things can be developed. And before I close, I just want to make a quick comment here, and that is that we have to find ourselves in the role of a nursery man. You know, nursery where they grow plants and then you buy and plant it in your own garden. So what a nursery man does, they grow plant and they take care of the plants. So all this family, small family in which we are as a grihast, this is nothing but the nursery of the Ishwar, and we are just the Mali or the nursery man, not the Malik. When that sense of possession comes, that I possess these family members or I possess this family, that's where the trouble begins. So we have to think about ourselves as a caretaker or a nursery man and a Mali, and think that Ishwar has given us this privilege to serve this small unit of the garden that is in my share. And that's what takes us to all the best things that we can expect in life. That is Parmar, Sneh, Anand, and our home becomes like a Swarga. Thank you very much, and appreciate you sharing these thoughts. If you have any questions, we can talk about after the event. I think our clock is a little behind. And I wish you all a very, very happy, successful, married, happily ever after. Enjoy the rest of the evening.